Welcome to Unleash the Awesome with Dave Gambrill. All of us have unique skills, talents, and abilities that aren't being used to their full potential. Our mission is to share the people, tools, apps, and other resources that will help you unleash your awesome on the world.
Yo, what's up? It's Dave. Welcome to another episode of Unleash the Awesome. Today, let's talk about check your relationships. Yes, check your relationships. And contrary to probably what you thought when you read the title of this and you clicked in to listen, we're going to talk about relationships with people, but we're actually not. While those things are super important and you need to make sure you get those lined up and figured out and taken care of and make sure you get the proper work-life integration. Notice I didn't say work-life balance. We'll talk about that some other time. But obviously, you need to get those relationships with people worked out and figured out. But I think just as importantly, and maybe in some cases more importantly, you need to check your relationships with success, in your relationships with money, in your relationships with work, in your relationships with failure, in your relationships with quitting and what that means actually. So if you think about it, a lot of the things that we bring with us into adulthood were imprinted on us by well-meaning people when we were little, parents, teachers, whatever. And we learn these things like money is the root of all evil. Quitters never win. Things like that, right? And we hear them enough as kids, and then they're enforced by, the people that love and care for us and mean well, and all of these things. But then that becomes some of the subconscious programming that you're currently running off of. So if you have not thought about these things or checked your relationships with these things or updated these things, it's essentially like your body is a brand new quantum supercomputer. Or just a supercomputer, maybe not even a quantum computer, but it processes really fast. I'm going to put it up there with quantum computing. But the operating system that you're running, if you haven't checked these relationships, is like you're running off of Windows 95. So you have this really awesome fast computer, your brain and your body, and all the things that have to do with your neurology and neurochemistry and things like that, right? Super fast, but you're still running off an operating system that is slowing it down, that is probably full of viruses and bloatware and whatever. And it's the equivalent of like when you start an old computer and it takes like 10 minutes to boot up, and then you're trying to click a button and that doesn't work, and then the little hourglass thing pops up, or the little circle thing on a Mac, the little beach ball thing spinning around, and you just watch it for a while. Like that's what a lot of us are doing with some things. Honestly, and I can only speak for me, but I needed to check my relationships with food and exercise, which I didn't even mention in the list before, because the way I looked at things until recently was food was a reward and exercise was something you did when you essentially wanted to beat yourself up and you needed to do the work and go grind and throw up in the bucket and like all that stuff, all that macho stuff. And, I have military experience. Played sports when I was in high school and in the military, stayed very active. And it was this whole thing about, run until you puke and, exercise until the weight falls on your chest, obviously with a spotter, right? You don't want to hurt yourself, but like go to, temporary muscular failure, push out these extra reps, and training should hurt, exercise should hurt, all that kind of stuff, right? And when I started unpacking that a little bit and checking my relationships with those things, I was like, wait a second. Food is actually I'm blessed to be in a situation where I can put pretty much anything I want into my body. And that has pros and cons, right? So I could put anything I want in there. I could eat a lot of pizza and drink a lot of beer or wine or something. And while that's great in the short term, in the long term, that adds up, right? So you don't have to abstain from that stuff altogether, right? Everything in moderation, including moderation sometimes. But when I revisited that and said, okay, let's just look at what's going on, what's happening here. Let me check my relationships with food and calories and protein and carbs and exercise and what does that look like? And when I did that and did a little bit of inner work, and realize that I wear all kinds of devices, wearables that will provide me with all kinds of data on my heart rate and how many steps I took and essentially what my basal metabolic rate is, or how many calories I burn without doing anything really, just living, but then how many calories I will burn doing exercise and all that stuff. And then apps like MyFitnessPal where I can track the calories and my macros and stuff like that. Once you figure that out and have a new relationship with those things, then you can start to get the results that you're looking for. You don't sabotage yourself. And if you still want to have, quote, a cheat day or a cheat meal or enjoy yourself on vacation or a holiday, you can, because you've had the discipline the rest of the time, right? Jocko Willink, Extreme Ownership and the Jocko podcast, and he's written a bunch of other books, Way of the Warrior Kid, and he's got a nutrition line called Jocko Fuel and all kinds of stuff. He often says, discipline equals freedom. So in this case, if you stay disciplined with how you eat and your calories and your exercise on a general daily basis, then I forget the calculations of like how many meals you eat a week, but I guess let's just say you're eating 3 meals a week, and 3 meals a day times 7 days in a week is 21 meals. Okay, I know for a lot of people they're eating more, but for the sake of our conversation, if 20 meals or 19 meals out of your week are good, they're within your macros, they keep within your calories, whatever, then that 1 or 2 meals is not going to kill you. It's not going to take you totally off track unless you allow it to, unless your relationship with that stuff is, well, I backslid already, or I have a cheat meal now. What's a cheat day? And then what's a cheat week? And then what's a cheat month? And then it adds up again. Right? So I would go through a lot of stuff myself, self-flagellating. There's your big word of the podcast. Behavior of, I missed a day of working out, or I didn't eat right today, or whatever. Well, there it goes. It's not perfect. So let's just not go back to being disciplined, and then not having a good relationship with those things, right? And then not getting the results that I was looking for. And the thing about a lot of this stuff, my friends, is that we know what to do. We just don't do what we know because of the relationship that we have with whatever it is. I've been talking about exercise here for a little bit, but it could also be with finances or money. I see a lot of people banging on billionaires and saying, we shouldn't have billionaires, and look at these guys going to space and whatever. And just that kind of attitude alone, if you have it, is not a helpful relationship for you with money if your goal is to have more wealth, have more money, have more abundance. And I get it. You can have abundance without necessarily having financial wealth. But I'll tell you, money doesn't buy you happiness, but it sure does help you look for it in a lot more places, right? So if you have that idea of like, well, look at these guys, these billionaires, they don't even pay taxes. And you watch the news and you watch the stories about that, and you're like, wait, but if you know what's going on and you unpeeled that layers of the onion a little bit, you would realize that, okay, maybe they don't pay taxes, income taxes or specific taxes, because they're playing a different game. They're playing at a different level. The tax code was written specifically for business owners. And so they figured out, okay, this is how they're written. Let's just capitalize on them. And in this case, it's a situation of don't hate the player, hate the game. If you don't like the game, then you have to change the game, or you have to work on changing the rules. And there's ways to do that. But these guys and gals that are billionaires, they maybe don't pay the taxes that get highlighted on the news that you watch. And I'll give you a hint. You maybe just shouldn't watch the news. I've talked about that plenty on this podcast. But they pay, they employ thousands of people. They're paying Social Security taxes. They're paying taxes on the stuff that they're paying to their employees. They're helping to build out infrastructure, create jobs, create all kinds of wealth, sometimes creating entirely new industries. And then you have situations where like Mark Cuban recently started a whole new business where he's helping to disrupt pharmaceuticals, generic pharmaceuticals, and making sure that people can get access to the drugs. Because honestly, the healthcare system in this country, the United States, is really jacked up, mostly because of insurance companies. And we could talk about that some other time, but, and patents, that we need some patent reform and be able to protect the companies that are taking the risk to create these products, right? So people always say, again, people always will look at the news and be like, well, these pharmaceutical companies, they're the bad guy. They charge this amount, blah, blah, blah. again, it's really the game and the nature of the environment that they're playing in. So don't hate them for creating new compounds that have probably saved your lives or the lives of people around you, right? You got to look at the game and be like, well, they're just doing what's available under the current situation for them. But let's look at money specifically, because I coach people through building businesses and side hustles and figuring out their relationship with money and work, right? And a lot of people are like, I got to work hard. If I'm not working hard, then I'm not going to make money. And when I mention a book that I've mentioned, I don't know, this isn't even the 100th episode of this podcast, and I've probably mentioned this book 90 times already. But when I mention a book like The 4-Hour Workweek, right? If you're programming, if your relationship with work is like, you got to work hard, you got to work 60, 80 hours a week, you got to hustle and grind, you got to work till your fingers fall off, until you bleed, no, sleep is for when you're dead, like all that stuff. If that's what you believe and that's how you operate, then when I say, hey, you should read a book called The 4-Hour Workweek, you're like, no way, that's not me. I'm not lazy. I don't do that. That's dumb. That doesn't make any sense, because that doesn't fit with your relationship with work. Right? But if you had a more curious attitude of like, well, what is this all about? And you look at somebody like Tim Ferriss, who's the guy that wrote the book, The 4-Hour Workweek. I'll link to it in the show notes for you. He's pretty damn successful by many measures. Not only has he figured out wealth and recurring, I'm not going to say totally passive income, but he has a lot of investments in a lot of things that have served him really well, that have freed up a lot of time for him to do essentially whatever he wants, because he has operated from the stuff that he teaches in his book, The 4-Hour Workweek, which has a number of timeless principles in there. Yeah, the book was written in 2007, but like 85% of it still pertains to today, right? Some of the examples are outdated maybe, and maybe one or two of the tactics, but as an overall strategy, it's pretty solid. So when I recommend something like that, or I recommend like, hey, why don't you set up something where you could do the work once and then get paid repeatedly? Some people, just because they believe in this hustle and grind and you have to like trade hours for dollars, it's hard for them consciously to buy into it, but more importantly, subconsciously. And so when opportunities come across their plate, they can't see it. They just won't even avail themselves to the opportunity, because they're like, that looks like a scam, or how could you possibly only work 4 hours in a week and make $1 million, which is not really the premise of the book. It's just a title to get you to buy it, honestly. But as I run my business now, and I have a pretty sizable business, and I'm essentially the only employee. Occasionally I have contractors, and sometimes my kids or my wife help out, whatever, but like I don't have a team, and my business is all right. And I'm not working, I'm not 4 hours a week, but I really only work 3 days out of the week, pretty much Tuesday through Thursday. And I go pretty hard on those days, but there's also exceptions and flexibility and choices. For example, I'm recording this podcast on a Friday, which, all right, it's work. I'm creating content, but my relationship with work had to change, and my relationship with freedom and flexibility and boundaries and all that stuff had to change, because like, you know what? I wasn't feeling creative yesterday, Thursday, and there's some other things I needed to tend to that were kind of top of mind that were going to help me be creative. So I'm like, okay, let's do some stuff I typically do on Friday, today, or Thursday, and then tomorrow I'll record an episode of the podcast or whatever. So my relationship with time and how I manage time and how I think about priorities and the things I need to get done. And my, honestly, a lot of stuff I needed yesterday had to do with relationships with people, with family and things like that. I needed to take care of some stuff. But I wasn't so rigid in my schedule and my boundaries to be like, no, I have to do this thing. I have to work today. I have to blah, blah, blah. I had to check my relationship with time and productivity and efficiency and effectiveness. And that's another thing. People have this fetish around efficiency and being effective, but lots of people are spending a lot of time being efficient or effective at things that just don't move the needle. So there might be an opportunity for you to check your relationship with that and say, you know what, maybe there's some stuff I'm doing that I shouldn't be doing at all, right? Maybe I should just get rid of it. A lot of people talk about outsourcing and delegating. I'm like, what about deleting? Maybe there's stuff you're doing in your day that's just not serving you, and it's not serving anyone around you. It's not serving you in the short term. It's not serving you in the long term. You need to check your relationship with that thing. If it's like activities and you're just doing it, and if you feel like, well, I'm staying busy, I'm doing work, I'm hustle and grind, Dave, blah, 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 but it's not moving the needle, need to check your relationship with that, right? So my polite encouragement to you today would be do what I call a thought audit. Thought it. Think about the things that you think about. Think about the relationships you have with money. Why do you get angry when other people get wealthy ethically and by the current rules that are laid out there? Does that make you angry? Are you upset that they have more than you? If so, I'm here to tell you that's going to create some issues in your brain and your programming, that when you start to have success or you start to have some more abundance and you start heading in that direction, you will self-sabotage yourself, period. End of sentence. I know it to be true. Whether it's financial, whether it's health and fitness, whether it's relationships with people, anything. If you think that opening yourself up to a relationship with somebody and kind of letting your guard down and being authentic with them is bad because you got burned the last time or you had a bad breakup or something, and so now you're like, well, I'm just not going to have relationships with anyone, or I'm not going to let my guard down, or I'm not going to be vulnerable, or I'm not going to be loving and caring, or I'm not going to do all these things, then guess what, friends? You're going to have a really hard time having a loving, meaningful relationship with somebody because your guard is up all the time. You have to check your relationship with that. So again, my encouragement to you would be go look at, I'll see if I can put a link to one in the show notes. There's this exercise I sometimes do with my coaching clients called the Wheel of Life. And basically it's just I guess like a pie chart, but it's equally divided into the different areas of your life. So health, finances, relationships, work, hobbies, things like that. And different exercises have different categories. But basically there's like 7 to 10 generally categories that you probably will want to monitor in your life. And I would encourage you to go through that exercise and look at it and check your relationship. Well, first do the exercise and see, like, the idea is on this circle in each slice of the pie, you plot a dot depending on how successful you think you are, how well you're doing in each categories. And if you put it towards the middle, that means you're not doing very well in that category. And if you put it towards the outside, that means you're doing really well. So in finances, let's say you think you're doing okay, maybe in the middle, so you would put a dot there, and if you want, you could shade it in, right? It's also sometimes known as a spider graph if you're into data and all that stuff. But you do this exercise, and then I would encourage you to look at it and then say, okay, what is my relationship with the things in this category, in finances, in health, in work, in hobbies, in whatever, in your spirituality? Like, what is your relationship here? What are your beliefs? What are your habits? Right? James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, is another book for another day, but what things are you doing? What habits have you created around your relationships with finances? And I think sometimes you'll find that the habits you've created are not congruent with what you actually want, but they are congruent with your current relationship with that thing. So if you believe that driving a fancy car and having Air Jordans, brand new white Air Jordans to wear for every day of the week, and having well manicured fingernails and all that stuff is a sign of wealth, and that's what you do, and you are overextending yourself, and you're paying or getting payday loans, or you're spending money before you have it and doing all of that stuff, but you want to be wealthy and have financial independence, right? That's what your goal is. I'm here to tell you, your relationship with money, you need to check that relationship, right? Many of the most successful people I know who have a lot of money don't worry about looking like they're rich. They would rather just wear shorts and a t-shirt and flip-flops every day or whatever and be able to do whatever they want, whenever they want, with whoever they want, and they don't really care how they show up. They don't need to project their wealth because they know they are wealthy, if that makes any sense. So I would encourage you to go through that exercise, go through the Wheel of Life, take a peek at it, and then analyze your relationships on these things, with these things. And then that's where you can start digging in and doing some work. So for me, I've been a little bit on this health and fitness kick lately because I'm reaching one of those milestone birthdays in my life. And that's always a great way to get a kick in the pants, to get motivated or inspired to do something. And so once I kind of checked my relationship with health and fitness and money and calories and food and all that jazz, then I was able to more clearly go find people that could help me, whether I paid for them, which in some cases I have, or whether I was just listening to podcasts or looking at YouTube videos, YouTube channels on those things that would help educate me, which honestly, in a lot of this stuff, because of my military medicine background, like I already knew it, but having some people reinforce it with some more current data and studies and things like that, and success and social proof, right, help solidify what I kind of already knew and what I needed to do. And then that way I found the stuff, and I found the stuff that was relevant for me, that now matched my new relationship with fitness, diet, calories, whatever. And then it helped me see success quicker and stick to a plan better because I was now in alignment with my relationships with these things. So friends, I know that if you go through this exercise, maybe you listen to this again, and then you do some soul searching, which isn't always fun. It isn't always rainbows and unicorns. Sometimes there's a little ripping the Band-Aid off or a little pain where you have to go like, ooh, yeah, okay, I need to work here. I'm telling you, when you check your relationships with whatever you want to be successful with in this world, in this life, when you check those relationships and get healthier relationships with the things that will help you have success, it will 100% help you unleash your awesome on the world. See you.
Thanks for listening to Unleash the Awesome. Please be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. And please share us on your favorite social media platforms using #UnleashAwesome.